So I know I'm posting. I know this is late. It's been a long day. Long day. But I've been thinking about this for a minute. So let's begin. Day 37 of 100 days. We're going to keep the party going. I'm Kirk Kennedy. I'll be your host. Welcome to CNN. Let's go in. This is probably going to be more than just one of these posts because I'm genuinely curious about this. I'm genuinely curious about this. All right. And you feel free to disagree. That's what we do, right? That's what we do. You disagree, right? But I've been for the last couple of years, I have been hearing and seeing the rise of a lot of young pastors, a lot of pastors, from the Michael Todds, the Tim Rosses, the any of them, right? And I don't make videos about these guys. I don't really care. There's enough videos about these guys, and so I don't feel the need. Me and Strack don't always feel the need to make videos about them unless they're just wild stuff. But there's a theme that I'm seeing among these kinds of like these really popular pastors. Like there's a theme, a sort of a gospel presentation that is something that has to do with finding your purpose, right? So this idea, I remember Rick Warren started this back in the day with the purpose-driven life and then the purpose-driven church. And I would say I've seen sermons from, and I want to say like Stephen Furtick, and he might not have, I could be wrong, but there's sort of a brand of pastors and a brand of Christianity that has to do with like finding your purpose. All right. So I'm curious about this. So I've been going on okay, is this idea biblical, right? So if you type in the word purpose in like some kind of like I use logos, right? Purpose is in the Bible a lot. And there's language that kind of similar to that. But if I Googled this, I went on Google and I just typed in God's purpose for your life. All right. And then the first thing that came up was what is God's purpose for me? Christian bookstore, reclaim God's purpose for your life. What is God's purpose for your life and how to find it? Discover God's purpose for your life, C.S. Lewis Institute. God will fulfill his purpose for you, Desiring God website. The 6 reasons to embrace God's purpose for your life. God's purpose for your life, 1 Peter 2, 4, 5 sermon. So I went to 1 Peter 2, verses 4 and 5, and here's what it said. As you come to him, a living stone rejected by men, in the sight of God, chosen and precious, you yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Christ, for it stands in Scripture, right? So I was grateful that they attached at least a scripture. But I've seen the way this is used by a lot of popular pastors and Christians. I watched a sermon of this guy basically saying, I ain't gonna let nobody stop God's purpose for me in my life. Don't let nobody stop God's purpose for you in your life. And people were applauding, and he was walking up and down the stage. I ain't gonna let nobody gonna stop my purpose. My wife ain't gonna stop God's purpose for me. My kids ain't. And he was just going in, and people was like, yeah. And I was wondering, right? What do you mean by finding God's purpose for your life? Right? When I look in the scriptures, let me tell you what it sounds like they mean first. It sounds like they mean there is some hidden purpose that God hasn't revealed to you yet. And if you don't do certain things or position yourself in a certain way, you will not find out what God's purpose is for your life. That's the way it comes off. If I'm wrong, if any of you subscribe to this brand of Christianity, feel free to correct me in the comment section, whatever, right? But the presentation is essentially there is this purpose that you don't know about yet, that only God knows about your life. And you need to carry yourself a certain way to get this purpose. All right. That's kind of how it comes off. Here's the problem for me with that. This is just me. Now, you might accept this. Here's a problem for me with that. Number one, it gives the impression that what God has put in his word is there's something else going on. There's another kind of revelation that you need from God, which in the history of the church would be called Gnosticism, right? This sort of special revelation that you get from God. And it almost seems like some people have this revelation and some don't. Now, if you're talking about purpose as your job, what job you're going to do, even that is not biblical to me. I don't see where God has this mysterious what kind of job you're going to do. So, like, I don't know what they mean by purpose, and it could just be ignorance on my part. But I don't think it is. I'm not the sharpest tool in the box, but I can cut a couple of pieces of wood. This idea of purpose, what I see it doing is it's creating in this new generation of Christians a dissatisfaction with God because they're waiting for him to give them their purpose, something that they don't currently have yet. And you're doing things that may stop your purpose. So let me ask you this. When Jesus said, if you love me, obey my commandments, right? What is that not purpose? I'm just like what purpose are we talking about? There's a lot of books reclaiming God's purpose for your life, but what I think is happening, it's creating an entitlement among Christians where they're expecting God to give them some purpose, reveal this great purpose for their life. And they're excited about the possibility of that. But then as time goes by and they don't get that purpose, what happens to those believers in their faith? I think this is a new gospel message that is not the gospel. I don't think the gospel is about finding God's purpose for your life, right? I don't think that's the God. I think the purpose is clear already, right? We have the commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? In every letter in the New Testament, your purpose is laid out. To resist the devil and he will flee from you. To walk in the spirit. Do not gratify the desires of the flesh, right? To examine yourself, make your calling and election sure. To persevere to the end, right? He who conquers to the end will be saved. Revelation 21. Like, to me, again, correct me if I'm wrong, those are all purpose statements. Like, now what job I have and who I marry, God never promises that. God never promises that he doesn't even promise that we'll be married. Doesn't even promise that we won't have any. I don't understand this purpose language apart from I deserve something from God, my purpose, and I'm waiting for him to do it. And if God doesn't give you your purpose, then what does that mean? So let me ask you this question. Like, what was God's purpose? So here's what he said. This is a crazy passage. So I want you to keep in mind, if the gospel message is finding God's purpose for your life, right? What would you say the purpose was in like a Hebrews 11, right? Let me read just a portion of Hebrews 11, and you tell me, what do you think the purpose was, right? This is what Hebrews 11 says. We're coming in at verse, I'm going to start at verse 11. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past her age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. So I guess that was her purpose, to get pregnant when she couldn't have kids. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants, as many as the stars of heaven, and as innumerable grains of sand. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers, exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland, right? So it's talking about, and it talks about people were beaten, they were sawn in two, they were in sackcloth and ashes. Like, what purpose was that? Like, what purpose? So God's purpose for them was to be in sackcloth and ashes. Here's why I'm saying this, because I think there's a new gospel message that's called finding your purpose. I think Rick Warren started this, the purpose-driven life. And it sounds good. And the word purpose is in the Bible quite a bit. But it's rare that you will hear, first of all, the terms your purpose, if you put in like those two words, those don't connect that much in the Bible. Your purpose. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna just show you this real quick. I know y'all not watching this right now. Y'all watching me, but all right, I use Logos. All right, let me show you this. Oh, you can't see it because I'm in this pseudo thing. All right, I typed in your purpose, and then Logos will pull up every time it says your purpose in the Bible. All right. In Job, it says this, yet these things you hid in your heart, I know that was your purpose, right? So this is Job's friends talking. You have the next time your purpose is used back to back. This is in the scriptures. Right now, it looks like only that one time your purpose is used. Ephesians 6:22, I have sent them to you for this very purpose, that you may know how we are and that he may encourage your hearts. This idea of your purpose is not in the Bible as a theme that Christians should be waiting for God for and seeking for. And I think what's happening is a lot of people are dissatisfied with God. They're bored of their Bibles. They're bored of their churches. They're bored of, so everyone's looking for their purpose. And they're going to anyone who makes it seem like, here's how you can find your purpose. So from a business perspective, writing a book on finding your purpose may be purposeful. But from a biblical perspective, I think it's leading people astray. You know what your purpose is? To persevere to the end. Your purpose is to treat others the way you would be treated, right? This idea that you have this purpose from God that he's keeping from you, and you got to figure out and make sure that the relationships you have, because they'll stop your purpose. Now, people can stop you from being faithful, but being faithful is a purpose. So I think your purpose as a believer, I don't know what you're supposed to do for a living. I don't know all those things. The Lord will reveal those. But your purpose is to bear the fruits of the Spirit, to be faithful. Faithfulness, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, right? This idea of you finding your purpose is losing purpose. People out here waiting for God to give them something. And he's like, I gave you salvation. I gave you everything that you have right now. But people are acting like, well, I'm looking for this purpose. Don't let nobody stop your purpose. And then that purposefulness, you acting like God owes you something. And God doesn't owe us anything but his wrath. But what do I know? What do I know? I'm just purposefully trying to get a new tooth. What do I know? I just think a lot of this new brand of it's a false gospel. It's a false gospel. I'm not saying God doesn't have things for us. To be honest with you, I'm gonna end with this. To be honest with you, if we're being honest, let me tell you what your purpose. Here's your purpose. I should have put this on the screen. As a matter of fact, I should put this on the screen. And I'm going to read this. 2 Timothy 3:12. Here's your purpose. Here it is right here. I don't understand why no one's saying this is purpose. Listen to 2 Timothy 3:12. Listen to this. I'm going to put this actually on the screen. All right. I'm going to put this up. I want you to see this. This is from the ESV, 2 Timothy 3:12. Here's what it says. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted. So if you desire to live a godly life, you will be persecuted. That is your purpose, 100%. To live a godly life and be persecuted and persevere to the end. These people are lying to you, brothers and sisters. They're acting like there's some secret purpose that God has to reveal to you, and you need to position yourself. And if you haven't received it yet, because you haven't put, it's the prosperous. It's not prosperity gospel. It's not name it, claim it, but it's prosperous gospel. It's prosperous gospel that says, hey, God's wanting to bless you. Man, God says, look, you're going to suffer in this life. You're going to suffer in this life, right? But Paul said, I consider it our present sufferings not worth being compared to the glory that will be revealed in us. Romans 8:18. This idea of purpose is it's an American Fortune 500 Christianity slogan. That joint is a hustle. And I agree with Future right here. Our purpose is to share the true gospel with those who serve them. That's how you love your neighbors, man. So anyway, again, what am I talking about? What do I know? Rick Warren sold millions of books on it. I think beware of pastors that are promising you, anyone, Christians, anyone, that are promising you some purpose that God has for your life. Jesus said, look, if you love me, obey my commandments. That's enough purpose for me. That's hard enough as it is. Let's be honest. How many of you have loved the Lord your God with all your hearts and love your neighbor as yourself? How many of you do that? You can't even do that. We can't even do that. We can't even do that. So what constitutes a purpose if we can't even do these two commandments? Man, phooey. These people are mad because they can't handle the truth. Your purpose is to persevere to the end. Honor the Lord and be faithful. I'm out, y'all. It's late. I'm trying to watch the game. Grace and peace, y'all. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Like James. Make sure y'all see that. Peace.